College basketball today, right here on SportsGrid. It is great to be with you on a Saturday morning before an excellent Saturday slate gets underway. Kevin Walsh with Coach James Young and JY. Man, it is an action-packed Saturday. We also are going to look back a little bit at everything that we saw on Thursday and Friday leading up to this weekend here. It's going to be a lot of fun, my friend.
Yeah, Kevin, we're getting to that stretch run of the regular season. I think we have only one more weekend to play before we get into conference tournament. So this becomes go time. Teams are going to be jockeying for positions, some sneaky big games that we have coming up right off the bat. A team like, for instance, in-state here, Seton Hall, needing a quad one win, needing a really big performance against a UConn team that scored and beat St. John's by about 1 billion points. Really big games in the SEC. Houston on a 3-game losing streak. How do they respond? So this is the type of year, folks, when you turn the page and you get to like March 1st tomorrow, as a college basketball coach, every game is almost do or die. You have to be starting to play your best basketball right now as you lead into the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament, Kev, because seedings now are really up for grabs.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I think you mentioned UConn's performance against St. John's. I know that's going back to Wednesday, but that's one of the more important results we've seen this season. It was so dominant by the Huskies. It's going to give them an opportunity to get up to that one line, right? They're likely going to have to win out, maybe a Big East regular season crown or a split with St. John's and all in all win that Big East tournament. Like that's what they'll have to do. But it's given them some life. It's one of the 10 most impressive wins any team has put up this season. I feel pretty confident in saying that. What I want to quickly reference is a team who's going to be in action today. We're going to talk about, Coach, but just for the crowd who maybe hangs out with us on a regular basis on a Saturday, maybe haven't seen you and I throughout the week, last weekend, Duke, Michigan. So much anticipation around that basketball game. I think it met the moment. I thought it was a ton of fun to watch. Maybe a little extra enjoyment as somebody who was on Duke in the basketball game. I know you did well in that game as well. But tell people what your biggest takeaway was from last week's most important game, one of the biggest games in recent college basketball regular season history, Duke, Michigan.
Well, number one, I just give credit for those two teams that play each other. I know some of the old guard is like, oh, it's conference play. I'm okay with it, and we'll talk about it more. I think we talked about it last week or on GTD when I was on with you. But I want to see some of these teams that aren't in the biggest conferences ever, like Duke, in regards to who they compete with in league, to put the measuring stick out there. So I'm calling out, yes, you, Mark Few, and maybe do one of these games next year. I think people will love to see it. What I took from this game is this. Duke, you can now put in the conversation as possibly the best team in the country, because if Michigan would have won this game with the resume they had going into this game, they could have been the clear runaway favorite to be the national championship. That's one. Number two, Duke plays defense at such an elite high level that I continue to be amazed by their play. Three, before the game, and Kevin brought this up more than I did, is that Elliot Cadeau and the Michigan guards were going to struggle. The talk going into the game was the Duke guards, right? Evans, Foster, how were they going to do? And what you saw is the Michigan guards succumb to that Duke pressure defense, and that can be the recipe for disaster for Michigan. Pressure the guards, force them to contested shots. They don't knock it down, win the game in a street fight. Duke, I think, exposed the blueprint to what you have to do to beat Michigan, and that's why I also think they struggled against Minnesota the next game after that.
Yeah, I just think for me, it was Duke kind of pulling Michigan back to the pack. Now, I don't mean they all of a sudden are showing us, oh, this Michigan team isn't that good. No, Michigan's great. But we talked about it a lot, I thought, on that Saturday, that it was on the board that Michigan was going to be priced 2-1 or lower especially if they were dominant in that game against Duke. And it really shifted things around. We'll get into Duke's game today against Virginia. We'll talk about what's on the line in a matchup between Arizona and Kansas, and some ranked action in the SEC, Tennessee and Alabama, Florida, Arkansas. Really excited to break that down. But JY, the Big Ten delivered us ranked Thursday and Friday. What was the bigger result to you? Michigan State's win at Purdue or Michigan's win against Illinois?
Honestly, you're going to hate me? Yes.
You're right. I am going to hate you.
For different reasons. One, I thought that what I saw out of Purdue was leading up to the game is they looked like they were starting to be back. But Tom Izzo shows you Tom Izzo. Out-toughs you and out-executes you. So now the problems that I thought we didn't have with Purdue are now back with Purdue again. For Michigan, it's getting back to their identity, which is spraying the ball around, 1.5 assist to turnover ratio, did not shoot the ball great from three, but took an Illinois team that was at one point had the best offense in the Big Ten and held them to 70 points. And I think that is the key. And I think what you also did is when you play on the road, Kevin, to me, it's not always the star players, right? It's the role guys. You want to limit the role guys, right? So Wagler, Boswell, those guys give you, 37 points, but you limit everybody else. And I think that's key. When you get into these matches, especially at home, you want to take the role guys out. You know the old phrase, Kevin, right? You shoot better in your own gym, particularly the role guys. So if you're able to make the best players work for what they get, but then limit other players, the role guys, I thought that was a great strategy by Dusty May and his troops. They look like they're back after a rough loss with Duke, and then obviously the rough game with Minnesota. They now look again like the team we think could make a deep run in March and get to the Final Four.
I totally understand why you say both, because I do think both games are relevant, right? As much as I'm giving you a hard time. But to me, Michigan State beating Purdue tells us more of the same, right? I don't think people are running to bet Michigan State outright tickets. I think it lets us know this Purdue team at a true, can they win the national championship? They don't belong on those lists. They've played 4 elite teams in their building. They've lost to all 4. When you consider how valuable home court advantage is in this sport, but again, we kind of already knew that. I think Michigan's victory at Illinois, and I know some people won't like this, I start to wonder just how good the Big Ten is. I don't mean it's bad. Michigan is the best team in this conference, and it doesn't seem to be close. And I don't think that gap is only a reflection on how good Michigan is. I think it is fair to wonder, is Illinois actually the best offense we've ever seen in college basketball? I think it's fair to wonder if Purdue is actually one of the 10 best teams in the country. Like, I'm not sure Purdue is better than Kansas. I think that's okay to say. I'm not sure Michigan State is better than Tennessee. I'm not sure right now. I know the numbers shine very brightly on the Big Ten. Michigan is incredible. They are no worse than the 3rd best team in the country. Still an argument for the best. I have questions around the rest of the conference at the top level, Coach.
And I think my thing with this is I think that's going to affect seeding committees, and I think that's going to affect matchups when these teams meet, when you get a Big Ten versus an SEC or a Big 12 team. Those teams may be, folks, ready for this, more battle tested, which means they may not have the better seed when it comes to the tournament, but when they get to those matchups, I could be looking at upsets, even though as a coach, it may not be an upset.
A conference that seemingly nobody questions is the Big 12, and it is not hard to see why. Today, we get ranked versus ranked. Kansas, Arizona, Texas Tech, Iowa State. We break those down next.
much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, folks, back in the mix with you on college basketball today. Coach, let's get right into it here, man. Arizona and Kansas. This, of course, a rematch from when Kansas handed Arizona their first loss of the season. I want to stick on the Arizona piece of it, Coach. I'm curious if you agree. Arizona sat for a while as the number one team in the AP poll, right? Booked as national champion favorites. They had incredible out-of-conference wins. They beat Florida on opening night. They won at UConn. They smashed Alabama. And I feel like the Arizona perception has never been higher than right now after winning at Houston. I think that occasionally, when they were the number one team, while they were unbeaten before that Kansas game, right? People were waiting for a loss. And they're like, they're probably not as good as Duke. They're probably not as good as Michigan. And I feel like that game last week, right? We had the two big games, Duke, Michigan, Houston, Arizona. I feel like Arizona put all doubt to rest as to whether or not they should be considered in that Duke, Michigan class with their victory on the road against Calvin Sampson's team.
It's because it's Houston. And it's because of that stretch of games that we talked about that they were going to play, where we're going to find out a lot about them. And I also think, Kevin, and we'll probably get to it at some point, is we also need to find a little bit more about Houston, a team that's just not looking very Houston-like and maybe not as offensive dynamic as we thought, because they've kind of come back down to earth. But this is really about Arizona. And Arizona is looking at Kansas as a payback spot, and we have to realize that in that win, that 82-78 win, there was no Darren Peterson. So there's that. There's so many layers and implications in this game today for Arizona, continuing to get back on track, right? Will they try and push tempo, make it a running game, especially with a guy dealing with a bad hamstring? Will they win the battle of the paint? Right? Will they continue to be this excellent team versus quad one? Did they get one of those, Evan McKay calls it kill shots, right? When you get to an 8-10-0 run at home, get the McHale Hill Center rocking. And then it's Kansas. Flory Badunga becomes a big player in this game in regards to him dominating the boards offensively and defensively. Because, Kevin, if Badunga can dominate the boards on the offensive end, that negates transition for Arizona. So that's a double-edged sword right there that Badunga can do right there by himself. Trey White has been, was terrible in this game. And let's see what he does. And for Kansas, when you deal with going to the McHale Center and these big environments, especially a team that wants revenge, the key, shorten the game, right? Keep it close. Be within 5 or 6 points at halftime. Try to be there and then steal it in the end, because that was been our thought with Arizona leading up to this stretch is, hey, you can get them in the end because they may not be able, Tommy Lloyd's group may not be able to execute, right, in the half-court, late-game situations. Can Bill Self shrink the game down, slow it down, and get it to a point where they can steal it in the end, where Tommy Lloyd's team may panic and take bad shots and you steal and get the win?
Man, JY, I'm so excited to watch this game play out here today because, for Arizona, I do think, and again, I set the stage, I don't think that they necessarily have anything to prove, but I do think a dominant covering victory here would be quite a loud statement. But I tend to, agree with this idea that Kansas is going to be able to hang. I think this is a really big number that we are seeing right now being priced at 9.5. Now, there are some returners, Coach, for Arizona, and I wanted to get your perspective on that of when you bring in what could be important guys. Aristode's missed a couple of games. Now, he is not someone who is as impactful as, Burries or Bradley or Delasoro, but there's a lot of hype around Aristode. But also Koa Pete comes back into the fold, right? And they've been getting good minutes out of Awaka. Obviously, Koa Pete's played a ton of games. But can you give us, Coach, a little bit of an idea of the challenge or maybe ease that this will be for the Wildcats today to implement some of their guys back into the fold today?
I think being at home helps, Kevin, because you have the familiarity of your home crowd. You're not going to Fog Allen to play. So I think that is a key thing. Listen, these are big time players. And I think that also speaks to the fact of what I tried to talk to you about before is if you have everybody back and guys have stepped up in their absence, now Tommy Lloyd feels comfortable. That way make you want to push the pace more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you now know you can go to the bench. You can sit down these guys and feel like you're not going to lose a ton. I think that is the key thing to look at is now Coach Lloyd's bench is now extended. You can win different ways. You can use different combinations, and you can force Kansas to really play and get up and down the floor. We obviously know about Darren Peterson. Floyd Badunga is a big kid. I always used to tell kids I train and I coach, how do you negate offensive rebounders? Make them run. Make them run. Get the rebound, first 3 steps, you're down the floor. Make Badunga play 94 feet. If Badunga's playing 94 feet and not 12 feet, then that gives Arizona advantage. Watch for him to sub a lot early, get guys in and out, and try and make that run, I would say, Kevin, mid-second half to try and extend the game and put it away by using your depth.
On the Darren Peterson side of this game, I think he could be in line for a great, great game. I hate to add the caveat, as long as he actually plays a full allotment here. But Darren Peterson has played a bunch of 35-minute efforts, Coach, against Houston, Cincinnati, slow, really good defenses. This is it's a great defense in Arizona, obviously. This is an up-tempo game. A lot of pace, right? That's an NBA-like environment for an NBA-ready guy. Darren Peterson could give us a one to remember. I really, really believe if his body holds up and he actually goes out there and plays the 30-plus minutes, Coach, that they're going to need him.
And honestly, for his draft stock and the way that Diban's has been playing, Kevin, and the way he's been shooting, he needs it. He needs it because I think it will quiet some of the noise with his play as of late.
All right, let's lock into Iowa State and Texas Tech. How dangerous are these Red Raiders without JT Toppin? We'll talk about it next.
think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Iowa State, Texas Tech is a game that I am not really going to overcomplicate. I, in looking at this spot, thought Iowa State would be the side. I just think I'm late to the number. It to me is Cyclones or pass. Look, you guys know I love an opportunity to take points with a good team, and you could certainly qualify Texas Tech as that. I think this team offensively is playing a little bit above their heads right now in the absence of JT Toppin. The Cyclones are capable of smashing a team. And I feel they are, and this is going to sound very greedy of me, as somebody who's invested in Iowa State in the futures market, who have, since me placing that wager, beaten both Kansas and Houston. I'm waiting for like a dominant Iowa State game, I still feel. I know they beat Kansas by 18. I don't think they played incredible. The Houston game was nip and tuck, and it was kind of a tale of two different halves. They lost at BYU. You beat Utah. Okay, again, I wonder if today, Coach, we get the clean 85-62. And I know how that sounds as somebody who's like, I missed out on 8.5 or 9.5. I'm not laying 10.5. I think I've missed the best of the number on the Cyclones, but they are very clearly the way I would play this game if I were to get involved.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think the way you play it is I think you're going to take the game live and let, because what Texas Tech is going to do is they're going to continue to play on emotion, right? Without JT Toppin. Us against the world. No one thinks we can play with these guys. Yada, yada, yada. Early on in the game, be locked in defensively. Scouting reports will be locked in. Force Iowa State into late shot clock decisions, slow the game down. Grant McCassin plays the game the way he wants for about the first 10 to 12 minutes. At some point, TJ Aschenberger's team is going to smash this team. So my point to you is if I think Texas Tech, especially as a coach, you get your guys to play on emotion of us against the world on the road, no one thinks we're going to be here, that usually means fast starts and then you fade. Whether it's right before halftime or early on in the second half, you just kind of give out and you have nothing left. That's why I think the best play to play this game is I would take Iowa State, I would take it live. I think they're going to eventually force tempo. They're going to get out in fast break. They're going to get points over turnovers. They'll probably have a lead near double digits, maybe at the half. But I'm not taking it to start. I'm going to let this game play out. I'm going to see this thing at about 10 or about 12 minutes in. Give me to the under 8 timeout. This game may be tied. Texas Tech may even be in the lead. And at some point during a media timeout, TJ Ossenberger's team is going to flip the switch and they're going to run away with it. Get it at a lower number. Let the game start. Let it come down. Then jump in on Iowa State.
All right, Coach, I'm going to kind of clear out here, right? ISO, just run the play for the guy. Kelvin Sampson's lost 3 in a row. What does it look like here today against Colorado?
Pain. Like Clubber Lang. Pain. Listen, and I'll tell you right now, it's my best bet. I'll just give it away right now in the first hour. It's Houston minus 10.5 in the first half. If you know anything about Kelvin Sampson, his team has gotten there. You know what's kicked in practice on Wednesday, on Thursday. Man, he probably ran them yesterday, the day before a game. And he will have this team, who now is not playing, ready, folks? And it's crazy I'm about to say, offensively, like we saw earlier in the year. I think they lean on their defense, and I think they absolutely punch Colorado in the mouth in the first half. Colorado's got to make this about, making threes and getting to the free throw line. I think there's also been a talk with Joseph Tugler about his foul trouble and his propensity to foul. And I expect Houston, who usually does this, Kevin, in the second half, for their confidence sake, Kevin, they need to be up by like 12 to 15 points at the break to get their mojo back. So I love Houston best bet minus 10.5 in the first half.
I am very interested in, again, I completely, especially this year, like Coach is the Houston guy. He can handle that. And, last year was my year with this team. I'm very curious to see what we get out of Kingston Flemings. There was a moment in time where people were like, hey, it's not a big 3, it's a big 4, or, hey, it's a big 5 with Kingston Flemings. Temperature check? Because I think Flemings is a treat to watch. I think he's super athletic. It jumps off the screen, the pace he can play with. I'm not saying he's anything other than one of the 8 best guys in this class, but I don't feel like right now I'm watching one of the 3 best guys in this class. I want to see how he responds today. All right, let's make a move over towards SEC next.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The SEC, what a conference, what a season. It's interesting because it's not last year, right? Last year was a special year, maybe one of the best single seasons a conference has ever had. They capped it off with a national championship, right? Multiple teams in the Final Four. But this year in the SEC, while they maybe only have one true dominant force and maybe only one real title contender, it's incredibly deep. The offenses are awesome. It feels like the league is miles ahead of everybody else on the offensive side of the basketball. And it presents us, JY, with some great ranked versus ranked action. Let's go to Florida, Arkansas here, because if you're the Houston guy, I'm the Florida guy. But we don't disagree. The funny thing is, we assign these things, we don't disagree on these teams, right? I agree with everything you say about Houston, and I think you agree with a lot of how I feel around Florida. They, to me, look like, we want to tier the best teams in the country, I still can't believe that Florida, when we talk national championship prices, is not being booked under 10-1. I think this isn't a slight to Arizona. I think Florida is just as good as Arizona. I think they would be a really, really tough matchup for the Duke Blue Devils, JY. I think this team is incredible. I think there is a chance that they roll up Arkansas here today. I played under, though, at 170.5. This number's on the climb a little bit here. Played it at minus 104. This Gators defense is in its own tier in this conference. They're the only one inside the top 10. They're one of only two, I think, inside the top 20. And I think for Arkansas, that'll be a little bit jarring. I think people will draw comparisons to when Florida played Alabama. But Arkansas might as well be West Virginia if you're going to compare them to Alabama, because nobody plays at the tempo that Alabama does. So, JY, I'm on the under 170.5 between Florida and Arkansas.
Listen, at the end of the day, there's reasons why Kevin is on the under. I'm on Florida. It's amazing how you could have 3/5 of a starting lineup and completely change the way that you coach. They were so Walter Clayton perimeter driven. And we talked about this, right, Kevin, last week. This was the point last year where Florida just started bludgeoning teams. And it kept going and going and going, and it got all its way to the Final Four. It's different, but it's the same. They're bludgeoning teams, but they literally destroy you in the front court with Howell, Condon, and Chinelu. And Chinelu becoming arguably, and he's had a couple of low, and I think he was one of my best bets last week, and he went under his rebounding prop. He's had a couple in a row. Watch out. Now, Arkansas may say to themselves, we have the firepower inside with Brazil and others to go at them. They ain't that big. And I think what Todd Golden's going to do is they are going to keep the lane sealed off, and they're going to get Arkansas into a jump shooting contest. And what's going to happen is Florida's going to dominate the defensive end of the boards, and then they're going to go down the other end, walk it up, and dominate the offensive side of the ball. So if you dominate the offensive boards, you negate runouts, and you force contested jumpers. Kevin and I are doing this, and this is how it's funny that we do this a lot. I just want people to understand, full disclosure, Kevin and I don't really talk about our picks before we go on air. We really don't. Like, we'll talk about some things. We talked last night about Michigan State, Illinois, which we were both kind of wrong on.
Happens.
But for the most part, we see things the same way in different ways, but we come out the same way. Kevin likes the under because of the dominating glass and the fact that Arkansas is not going to hit enough perimeter jumpers. I like Florida minus the points. So take it either way you want it, whatever number you get it best, parlay it if you want to put it together. But right now, you look at Florida and say, like in a loaded SEC, Are we about to see this team run the table again? The way they're playing, Kevin, I really think there's a strong chance this team may not lose a game until maybe they get to the Final Four.
Our second ranked versus ranked matchup in the SEC is Tennessee and Alabama. We'll talk about some of the other SEC spots in this opening hour, including Kentucky and Vanderbilt. But with Tennessee and Alabama, JY, a lot of people will, you see an Alabama game, and they are a team that I have a friend or two who will just kind of pop them. Hey, you like this Bama over? Because you see Bama, you're like, all right, well, the game starts at 160. That's just how these games are played, right? We see it all the time here, Coach. What do you expect, though, with a very different style on the other side of the court in Tennessee?
Rick Barnes is going to make this a street fight. And if he makes this a street fight, I don't think Alabama's got a chance. They're going to slow this game down, and they're going to make you do it. Tennessee is 15th in the SEC in offensive possession time, right? They're going to walk per possession length. They're going to walk it up. Kevin, they're at 18.8 seconds. That's average. That's their average. So that means more times than not, unless they're getting run out to transition, they're at 20, 23 seconds at times. That, I don't think people understand. The one thing like a team hates that wants to play fast is a team that goes exactly the opposite way. And in order to win and run, kind of goes where I'm going with the Arkansas thing, and this is my coaching background, you have to rebound. Tennessee, offensive rebounding, number 1 in league. Defensive rebounding, number 2 in league. The kills, the big shot you always worry about as a coach is the offensive rebound, kick out 3. Well, Alabama's 13th in offensive rebounding percentage. So those kick out 3s, not going to happen. To me, I love Tennessee, and I love the under. I think they bring this to the deep end of the pool, and I don't think Nate Oates' team can swim their way out of it.
So I like Tennessee in the game. I don't have a great feel for the total because I think everything that Coach says makes a ton of sense. I think Nate Oates might need to find a better balance, or maybe he's just playing to the roster that he has this year. It's incapable of playing defense, so why try? I don't know. I would think maybe mix in a little bit of effort on that side of the ball could go a long way. It just doesn't seem to be their MO. This is a game where, I find myself a lot of times, or not a lot, but a handful of looking at a road team and being like, what is home court worth these days? 7, 8 points, right? Like, home teams lay so many points. Tennessee laying 4.5 does not feel too heavy of an ask. Tennessee is, I actually think, a bit better than Alabama. Not wildly better, but a bit better. Maybe 2 points better. So then tack on 2.5 when I feel like occasionally we pay 6 points for home court. That doesn't bother me. I look at Alabama this year when we've put them on the road against the best teams in this conference. I mean, again, who fits that billing, right? Probably Florida, probably Vanderbilt. They lost both. They were blown out by Florida. They lost by 6 to Vanderbilt. Tennessee has been playing much better at home. And, Coach, I just think this is a good spot for the Vols. I laid the 4.5.
If you could find it really quick, Jalen Carey over his rebounding prop. The best offensive rebound against a team that can't rebound in a street fight. If you can find Jalen Carey's rebound props, run to the window and take it.
All right, certainly something to look at. We'll button up the SEC, talk about Boozer and the boys after the break right here on SportsGrid.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here. I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Kevin Walsh and Coach James Young here with you on a Saturday morning. Coach has already let people know who are here early with us what his best bet for the day is, and I take that as a bit of inspiration. So allow me to let you then in on how I see this board today. Before we get to Duke, Virginia, my favorite bet on the board is the Vanderbilt team total over. At 77.5, this juice was at minus 105. Against Kentucky. I respect the spot, right? Sometimes people find college basketball capping to be simple, and I don't say that with any slight. I think that it's smart. Ranked team on the road, catching points against an unranked, keep it simple. And that, again, is totally fine. Kentucky might win this game, but I have no reason to believe Kentucky will actually be able to slow down Vanderbilt. Vandy has been held under 80 just 3 times in conference play by Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Texas, the 3 slowest teams in this conference. That's not Kentucky. Mark Pope, since joining the SEC, has really struggled with these up-tempo basketball teams. Maybe he grabs 1 win a season, but these teams find success offensively against the Wildcats. And, Coach, again, maybe Kentucky can get it going on their end and have a big day. Colin Chandler, Otega Oweh, I'll be rooting they do. But Vanderbilt's team total is my favorite way to jump on this slate here today. Their total looks to be a climber, by the way, 154.5. Look like we're now seeing some 157.5 in market.
Well, listen, we did it again in a different way, but on different sides, but getting to the same result. I think this is going to be a fast-paced game. I think this game is going to get up and down. I think Kentucky wants us to get to 75-plus possessions. Mark Pope's team is going to want to run. So where am I looking at? Otega Oweh over 20.5 points, over 6 out of the last 8 games. 20 last time versus Vanderbilt. His usage rate, Kevin, has been up during SEC play. They're kind of giving him the ball in his hands. Let him create. Kentucky will try and play fast and get downhill and get to the foul line. Those are 3 things that Otega Oweh does well. So I still think this is where you get the team total over for Vandy and Otega Oweh to get over his 20.5, which probably means we're going over the number. But the problem is, Kevin, that number is so high and may have already left the station.
All right, now let's get involved here, Coach. It's Duke, it's Virginia. It's actually one of the biggest possible games. You could argue if you remove – actually, you know what? No, you cannot argue it's the biggest game we could see in the ACC. I was going to say remove the rivalry of it all. You could argue these are the two best teams, certainly, in the conference, right? I think most people would. Duke, off of the win against Michigan, sometimes like, ooh, this could be a hangover spot. Yeah, Cam Boozer was very close to outscoring Notre Dame by himself in the first half. They massacred the Fighting Irish. I know that that's not a great Notre Dame team. It was a 16.5-point spread that I think was coming. Like, people were buying Notre Dame throughout the day. It was an ugly result all in all here. But here's the thing. Virginia's most recent victory was pretty darn impressive too. I mean, beating NC State is a good win. They throttled the Wolfpack, a Wolfpack team that I think was hungry for that game, and ultimately it was a 90-61 result here, JY. What stands out to you when you break down Duke and Virginia?
Pace. And Virginia is not the Tony Bennett pack line defense, but they are very good defensively. And Virginia may be in this game, but if they want to be in this game, they're going to have to keep this game in the 60s. They're going to have to keep it in their 60s. I don't think there's any way Virginia can win this game if Duke has 75 or more points. But the crazy thing is you talk about Duke, I think that may play into their hands because they're going to force Virginia to spend 25 seconds on the shot clock every possession and then take a forced contested jumper and then walk the ball up the floor. So I don't have a real big lean on a side, but it kind of goes to my whole thing is if you want to compete at Cameron, you have to slow the game down, walk it up, play half-court offense, and play good defense. I think Virginia actually can do it. Kevin, I like the under in this matchup. I think it's going to be a very slow-down half-court basketball game.
I think it makes a lot of sense. What I've realized is I struggle to know exactly what I'm going to get from Virginia in terms of totals. I feel pretty often. I expect Virginia to hang here, though, today. I took the Cavaliers plus 10.5. It is mostly moving to 9.5 in the market. I do think if you're going to go against Duke, you want to get the best of the number. I'm not saying I fully expect the game to land 10, but, sometimes his coach says, like, hey, maybe you can just wait for Duke to score the first basket and bet Virginia live kind of situation. But here's the deal. Virginia right now ranks as one of the 15 best teams in the country. Here are the games that Duke has played against teams that are right now top 15. Kansas, they beat them by 12. Early season, no Darren Peterson. Arkansas by 9. Florida by 1 at home. Lost to Texas Tech by 1. Lost to UNC by 3. Beat Michigan by 5. You want to bring Louisville into this? We can. I think it kind of just shows that this Louisville team isn't really to be trusted, having lost to Duke by 11 at home and 31 at Duke. The point, though, is, Coach, Duke wins. But when they play good teams, like really good teams, right? Top 15 teams, they're usually single-digit wins for this Duke team here. So I think Virginia can hang. This group's been really impressive, and I don't think they need a win here to announce themselves to the college basketball world. I think they need to just hang around with the Blue Devils, and I think they will.
And what's interesting about Virginia, Kevin, they have no bad losses, right? If you look at 11-0 in quad 3 and quad 4, quad 1, quad 2, I think they're 14-3. So their resume is extremely strong. They don't need to win, you're right. But them being close to Duke, a Duke team that could be the overall number 1 seed, can still move them up. They could find themselves in a 3 or a 4 line, Kevin. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So for them, slow the game down, less possessions, that leans under. There's a play here in which Virginia can cover the spread and it go under the number.
All right, we're going to take a quick break on college basketball today. We have your 3-man weave right around the corner, our favorite college basketball player props on this Saturday slate, and a look at Clemson. Louisville is an upset brewing. We'll let you know on the other side right here on SportsGrid.
think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Three-man weave, college basketball today. Our favorite player props on this Saturday slate. Let's make it happen. All right, Coach, let's start with the producer action here. Again, we need a third. They go to the threes market. And I feel like they're trying to cozy up to you a little bit here with a Houston Cougar making the cut line here. Manny Sharp for 3+ threes here today against Colorado for the team in the back.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, Emmanuel Sharp, we talked about Miles Uzon, but Emmanuel Sharp has struggled also from the three-point line. So this is a good play for a guy that wants to get off to a good start, shoot well at home. You look at a team like Colorado, they are 11th in three-point percentage defense, according to KenPom. So to me, it's a good play. Emmanuel Sharp gets going. They get play well. I do like the play of Emmanuel Sharp getting 3+ made threes today.
Now, for Coach and I, a couple of Kansas Jayhawks. I think we could each get there, right? I think good teammates should root one another in. You know, I mean, how many points are there going to be here for Kansas today? Well, at least 31, I think, would be what we need here. JY, make the case, man, for your three-man weave.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Trey White over 12.5 points. This is Trey averaging 14 points per game, over 2 out of the last 3 games. And here is my other reason, and this will be kind of funny. First time out against Arizona, he scored 4 points, 1 of 8 from the floor. Darren Peterson was not there. I think these two guys play off of each other. Trey White is also a sneaky good free throw shooter. I'm going to go with Trey White over 12.5 points today for the Kansas Jayhawks.
So I think it makes a lot of sense, right? I do. Here's the thing with Darren Peterson. We had routinely been seeing his numbers at 20.5. And we were seeing these numbers against really good defenses who were also pretty slow. And the books have now finally adjusted Peterson because he's only scored over 20 points in one of his last 8 games. Here's the thing, though, about Darren Peterson. He is playing a up-tempo Arizona team. JY, when we look at the most recent up-tempo opponents that Darren Peterson has played, they would be BYU and Oklahoma State. And you know what happened in those 2 games? He only basically played a half. You know what also happened in each of those games? Darren Peterson scored 18-plus points. So this is going to sound crazy, but I actually think I only need a half out of Darren Peterson to get over the 17.5 points prop here today, JY, because it's going to be an up-tempo game. Now, I'd much prefer he plays the whole game. I'm obviously betting it because I think he's going to play a normal workload of minutes here today. But if he does, I'm not saying Trey White can't get there, right? 12.5 is a low number for a player of his talent. I think Darren Peterson could get you 25, 30 points here on the road. And you said it so well, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit more later on in the show, so maybe we won't do it all right now, but just the idea that Peterson needs a game like this is something I totally understand. Let me sneak in this Clemson-Louisville game here, JY, because it's a really interesting one. Louisville, light road favorites here at Clemson. I got to tell you, as I break this game down, I want to play Clemson, but I don't fully trust them. They've struggled with some of the up-tempo teams in conference, but Louisville has struggled against the better defenses in conference. I see it as either Clemson wins because their defense stepped up and met the moment, 70-65, or Clemson gets blown out because they can't score, and this looks something like 77-68. Either way, it's under the 146.5.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the thing is obviously Louisville's going to live and die at that three-point line where they shoot so well, but they're going on the road, and Coach Boswell's team is very sound defensively. They also are really going to try and control the glass, right? So it's a styles make fights thing, but Clemson can't win going away, right? Clemson's either got to win it close or get blown out because they can't score. Either way, folks, that's the only way to play this because it's going to be a razor-tight contest. This is a game where you could see at one point one big run by Louisville and then Clemson claw their way back. So there could be multiple betting opportunities, Kevin, in this game that you may have at your discretion if you want to play it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch this one play out. I think we've got ourselves a great early slate here, and that's just going to continue on. When you take a look, though, right now, the Big East gave us, I think, a lot to think about earlier this week, and I think it's something we need to dive into a little bit more. So that's next, and it's right here on SportsGrid.
Tanking is hurting the NBA right now too, and what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn, and it's a real thing that happened. So you can't strike it from the record. But if you did, I think Florida's looked like the best team in college basketball for about 2 months. And I think there are a bunch of results that suggest that.
College basketball today, only on Sports.